if you were a member of Congress responding to that question, uh, stand up if you agree with the proposition that the job of government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. What would you have done?
And I would have stood up. I would have stood up. And for one reason, I rhetorically would have diffused this bomb. Rhetorically, I wouldn't have played into Trump's hands. But at the same time, I have no problem with the premise that I care about the safety and the primary goal of the United States government should be to protect the safety of U.S. citizens. Sign me up. That sounds great.
On the Michael Medved Show, we welcome one of our favorite guests, Ruben Navarrete. He's a syndicated columnist, a podcaster for Ruben in the Center, and a best-selling author. He has a new piece about the drug cartels setting Mexico on fire to send a message. What is that message? And also, there is a great deal of discussion about a trap that has been set for Democrats, the trap set by Republicans and by President Trump in particular in the State of the Union address. Ruben Navarrete, thank you for joining us as always. What is the trap that you're talking about that may have some impact on the upcoming midterm elections?
Michael, so good to be with you again, as always. So, the trap that was expertly set by President Trump was to present this false choice and to do it on live television and do it during the State of the Union address to tell the chamber, look, stand if you agree with the following sentence. And the statement was that the primary goal of the United States government is to protect the safety of U.S. citizens, its people, and not, you know, serve the interests of undocumented immigrants. He may have used the term illegal aliens. And so, predictably,
He
Michael,
did.
two things happened predictably, Michael, and that's the Republicans all stood up and cheered, and the Democrats all sat on their hands. And the president, ever the showman, just drew that out. It was a few seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. And they kept going and going, and this campaign footage was being generated. I could see in my mind this being cut already into campaign commercials for Republican candidates in November during the midterm elections. So
Well,
he
again,
set a trap. The Democrats went into it. Yeah.
the implication of their ads that they've already started running and appearing is that Democrats, because they stayed seated, is not because they objected to the question. It's because they actually preferred the interests of illegal aliens above the interests of American citizens.
Yep.
And what could they have done in this situation if you had been sitting there as a
Yeah.
member of Congress? Who knows, you may be one day.
Hmm.
But if you were a member of Congress responding to that question, uh, stand up if you agree with the proposition that the job of government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. What would you have done?
I want to get to that answer to that question, but first, you said something. You said the impression that people got was that the Democrats sitting and refusing to stand were really going to bat for undocumented immigrants. They were saying loud and clear that they put the interests of the illegal immigrants above everybody else. You've known me a long time, and the reason I have trouble with that premise is I have written for 35 years about Democrats being horrible in immigration. When I look out at that chamber, I see Democrats who have sold out the Latino community and sold out immigration reform advocates and sold out the ACLU and have tried to move to the center and have tried to, because they care about what voters in the suburbs think, they've been terrible allies. They've been terrible allies. Let's just say it that way. And you've had three Democratic presidents in a row, Clinton, Obama, and Biden, who were really quick to drop the hammer on illegal immigration, despite what Republicans think. So I have problems with the premise because I have all the receipts. I've been paying attention a long time. I have institutional memory, and I know the Democrats have not always been good on this issue. But in terms of what I would have done, I would have stood up. I would have stood up. And for one reason, I rhetorically would have diffused this bomb. Rhetorically, I wouldn't have played into Trump's hands. But at the same time, I have no problem with the premise that I care about the safety and the primary goal of the United States government should be to protect the safety of U.S. citizens. Sign me up. That sounds great. I don't see the problem with that. So I would have stood up. I also don't think that that you need to go to bat for, quote, illegal immigrants. But let's be clear, Michael, the reason polls right now show that the president has lost control of this issue is because vast majorities of Americans and even a big chunk of Americans who are Democrats and independents, and also a big chunk of Republicans, think ICE has gone too far. When I'm not a guest on the Michael Medved show, I'm a listener. And when I'm listening to your show, many of your guests have come on to say the same thing. Experts have said you can be for law enforcement, you can be for a secure border, you can think the people who are here illegally should be deported. That doesn't mean that you go along with what's happening in the streets of Minneapolis under the guise of ICE operations. So I think there's some nuance there. I get a strong dose of nuance whenever I listen to your program. I think most Americans approach this immigration issue with nuance, and certainly there was no nuance in the president's trap.
Well, it was a clear idea that it was binary. You were either one or the other.
Right.
You were either for American citizens or you were for illegal aliens. Now, this corresponds with something that the president also said, which is just manifestly not true. He says that no one has entered America during his presidency illegally. He's stopped illegal immigration cold. It's over.
Yeah.
How do we know that isn't true?
That's not true, Michael, and it's not true for a couple of reasons. The Border Patrol would not be able to come forward with its apprehension numbers and say that they're actually apprehending this number of people at the border, if not for the fact that people are still trying to attempt to cross the border. But here's what I really think about. I've been at the border several times on these guided tours by Border Patrol. They're really the same sort of tours that members of Congress get. They're really great. I've been up in the helicopter for Border Patrol and all these things. I've seen all these things. And the one thing they really impress upon you is that this is on the other side. The immigrant smugglers are running a multi-million-dollar operation, hundreds of $1,000,000 a year being made in bringing people across. And Michael, what I have trouble with is that all of a sudden, because Trump is elected president and beats his chest, that all of a sudden that whole apparatus got unplugged. All that unemployment, all those people, all the people that they employ, all the drug cartels, they just folded up. Now they're like selling fruit outside a highway in Tijuana. What are they doing? I think the same Border Patrol has shown us that there are all these tunnels along San Diego. They say hundreds of tunnels that link Tijuana with San Diego and Otay Mesa and near San Diego. And I think that thanks to the Border Patrol, we know about these tunnels. And I think that these tunnels are being used to smuggle undocumented immigrants into the U.S. So I think it's business as usual for the cartels. But, you believe what you want to believe. And a lot of Trump supporters believe that he actually has sealed the border.
Well, despite that, he still gets high disapproval ratings on his handling of immigration. What do you think is at the bottom of President Trump's collapse on that issue? The idea that so many people who supported him in the past now think he's handling immigration badly.
I think it speaks really well for us. I mean, when you were taking classes at Yale Law School and I was taking classes at Harvard Law School, they taught us about the Constitution and due process and equal protection. And the fact that if you follow ICE, they've shown no regard for the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. And I think that it speaks well of us as Americans that we know this is not right. This is not the way things are supposed to work. These are not cops. This is not law enforcement, and we've often talked about the fact that my dad, who passed away just recently, was on the job for 37 years. Those of us who have been around this know how law enforcement is supposed to work. And these people wearing masks are not law enforcement. And so I think that, to answer your question, is what people are responding to. They know that this is not right, what's going on in Minneapolis, what could be coming to a city near you. It could be in Seattle tomorrow or San Diego tomorrow. And it's not American. It's not right.
Okay, meanwhile, something else that isn't right is the rampage by the cartels in Mexico, which are a threat to the Mexican government, a threat to the Mexican people. What can the United States do? I mean, other than authorizing some kind of invasion of Mexico, which the Mexican government doesn't want, clearly. What can the United States do to help curb the activities of these vicious and hideous cartels? We'll get to that and more with Ruben Navarrete coming up here on The Medved Show. Before we get back to Ruben Navarrete, let me just remind everybody to subscribe to our thriving YouTube channel, Michael Medved Official, which has not just this interview on it, but other interviews we've done on video, like it or not. And it is full of other kinds of material, all free and freewheeling at Michael Medved Official, our thriving new YouTube channel. Ruben, you've been writing recently about the situation in Mexico, which is very threatening to the president, to President Claudia Sheinbaum, and threatening to the whole Mexican attempt to try to better life for the people in that country, which is our neighbor. What can the United States do? What could President Trump and Vice President Vance and the others in the administration do to help support the fight against these evil drug cartels?
Michael, I'm going to give you an answer. It's not to be glib. I'm not trying to be funny, but I would steal a great Republican line and say, just say no. The American people need to just say no to their drug use. It's become clear that the drug war is over. It ended in surrender. We now have in nightclubs around the country, New York and LA, dispensing machines where you can get Narcan pumped out of the machine and help stop an opioid overdose on site at the club. You have over 25 states that have approved recreational marijuana use, including California. And I just find it odd that the president who we have now is someone who, not that long ago in the 1970s, was partying with friends at Studio 54 in New York, drugs everywhere, a sea of cocaine everywhere. The president has been, pretty clear about the fact that he stays away from drugs, cigarettes, and alcohol, and good for him. But come on, I mean, the circles in which he ran, he has always been around drug use as a baby boomer. And I think that we have surrendered in this country, and we are the ones who keep the now fentanyl trade going from Mexico into the U.S. So if the American consumers would just say no, we would have an impact that way. Short of that, in terms of a military response, here's what I think Claudia Sheinbaum really thinks about, Michael, and she's in a really tough spot. She wants to depart from AMLO, her predecessor, on Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and really try to get tough with the cartels. She's tried to get tough with the cartels that run her country. But at the same time, she can't be seen as a toady, a puppet of Donald Trump. As basically, she's carrying out his orders. And she's also afraid that if she doesn't carry out his orders, he may pull a Venezuela on her and basically do to her what was done to Nicolas Maduro and basically say, look, it's obvious you guys can't take care of business down here. We're going to send in the military. They're going to take care of the cartels. And I'll send you a bill. And the bill can be paid in silver because come to find out, Mexico has the largest deposits of silver of any country in the world. And so, as I joked, Michael, you'll like this line. I joked in my column, what the Mexicans don't want is to go to Guadalajara, see an airplane lands, and off the airplane jumps Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. If those two guys get off a plane in Guadalajara, hide the silver, okay? Hide the silver. And so I think that there's a concern, and Claudia Sheinbaum is thinking of all these various things, but it's clear the cartels have gotten too big. They've been emboldened by the Mexicans. This is very much the fault of the Americans who buy the drugs, and it's the fault of the Mexicans who let the cartels take over the country. And this is where we are.
Okay, in terms of letting the cartels take over the country, couldn't you make the argument that the use of American military resources in cooperation with the Mexican government would make a big difference in forcing the cartels to stand down?
Yes, I would make that argument. And guess what? Strange development here, Michael. I was in Guadalajara for about 8 days about a year ago. And what I heard from a lot of people, I talked to over 50 people about this during my time there, and they all, almost to a person, wanted Donald Trump to intervene. They were hoping that Trump would intervene in Mexico because they feel hostage to the drug cartels. So in a weird way, a lot of Mexicans, I would say, want to see Donald Trump liberate them from the yoke of the drug cartels. They don't know what comes after that, and they may not like the new landlord if Trump, in fact, begins to take over part of Mexican life. But they clearly are frustrated and frightened at what the cartels represent. So there's no problem pairing up U.S. military with Mexican military. The problem, Michael, and we saw this during the attack in Puerto Vallarta. Why did they pick Puerto Vallarta? Because that place is lined with American tourists, Canadian tourists and Mexican and American tourists. So what the cartel was saying, what the new generation Jalisco cartel was saying after we killed El Mencho, and I say we, it was the Mexican military with, now we know, intel from the CIA. What the cartel was saying is, we know what you did, America. We know what you did. And we're attacking you where you live. We're going to Puerto Vallarta to terrorize Americans. So this is my concern. You're going to have to do what you need to do militarily, but let's not be naive. We're going to get on the radar of the cartels as being their enemy. And if they decide to strike out against us, we're going to have to deal with that and fight them back even harder.
You're not saying, when you use the example of what we did in Venezuela, we arrested the president
Yeah.
because he had been involved in illegal activities that were damaging to the United States. Okay, you're not implying that President Scheinbaum should be arrested.
Not that she should be arrested, or she could legitimately be arrested. I mean, she's very popular. Unlike Maduro, she's very popular with the Mexican people. She's done a great job. I'm a big fan of her record and her accomplishments up to this point, even getting elected. She has a PhD in environmental engineering. She is a real force to be reckoned with. But think about what happened in Venezuela. They didn't just put in a U.S. government, a U.S. Official. They took Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, made her the president. And now all of a sudden, what could Trump brag about at the State of the Union? We got all these billions of barrels of oil from Venezuela, right? Our new partner, Venezuela. That's what I think the Mexicans are afraid of, that they may have a new partner that they didn't ask for. His name is Donald Trump.
Okay, obviously there is a great deal here. You can read the columns by Ruben Navarrete, which are illuminating and a perspective that is needed. It is a perspective from the center. In terms of American politics, going to the center and trying to attract a new coalition to replace the MAGA-verse that has basically dominated American politics